You've studied for hours, you know the material, but then, right in the middle of the exam, your mind just goes completely blank. So, why does our brain betray us right when we need it most? Well, today we're diving into the science behind exactly that, and, more importantly, how to fight back. I mean, we've all been there, right? You're staring at a question and you know the answer. You can almost feel it, but it's just gone. It honestly feels like your brain has packed its bags and gone on vacation. Okay, first things first, you're not alone, and you're not imagining it. This isn't some kind of personal failure. It's a hardwired biological response. And once you understand what's going on under the hood, you can actually start to take back control. So, let's get into it.
All right, section 1, let's talk about your brain on stress. The best way to think about this is like your body's own personal emergency broadcast system.
Here's the thing. Your brain isn't always great at telling the difference between threats. A saber-toothed tiger, a car swerving into your lane, or a final exam worth 40% of your grade. To your brain, a threat is a threat. And that's when it hits the big red button for the classic fight-or-flight response.
So, once that button is pushed, your system gets flooded with a cocktail of stress hormones. You've got adrenaline, which gets your heart pumping, and cortisol, which starts mobilizing energy. The whole point is to divert all your body's resources to what it thinks is essential for survival, like running away or fighting. And here is the absolute crux of the problem. When your body's in this state of high alert, it has a priority list. And sorry to say, recalling the complex details of historical events or a tricky math formula, that's just not on the essential for survival list. It's prioritizing pure physical power over complex thought. Now, it's also important to note that not all stress is the same. There's chronic stress, that's the long-term grinding pressure of a tough semester. But then there's acute stress, that immediate heart-pounding panic when the exam starts, and it's this acute stress that's the real culprit behind your mind going blank. So let's get a little more specific. The secret to why you forget during an exam isn't just that you're stressed. It's all about the timing, when those different stress hormones actually hit your brain. See, your body's response happens in waves. Wave 1, which happens within seconds, is that adrenaline rush. That's what makes you feel suddenly super alert. But then, about 10 minutes later, wave 2 hits. Cortisol. And cortisol, well, that's where the real trouble for your memory begins. And this leads to a really strange paradox. That stress response is actually amazing at helping you remember the stressful event itself. It's called memory consolidation. So yeah, you'll probably remember how awful that exam felt for a very long time. But at the exact same moment, that hormonal flood is actively blocking your ability to retrieve other, unrelated info. And here is where it gets absolutely wild. A study found that people's ability to recall information was still impaired a full 90 minutes after the stressful event, even when their cortisol levels had already gone back to normal. Just let that sink in for a second. You might start to feel calm again after that initial panic, but your brain's ability to actually access information can stay scrambled for over an hour. It's like a biological hangover from that initial stress bomb. Okay. So that's the problem. Let's talk about solutions. We're going to start with an in-the-moment toolkit, things you can do to pull your brain out of that fight-or-flight spiral right when it's happening. This is where a set of really simple techniques called grounding come into play. The whole idea is to break that cycle of panic by intentionally shifting your focus away from the stress and onto the physical present moment. You can think of grounding in 3 main buckets. There's mental, like slowly describing 5 things you can see around you. There's physical, like focusing on the feeling of your feet on the floor or the texture of your desk. And then there's soothing, which can be as simple as telling yourself, this feeling will pass. These little actions force your brain out of its panic loop and back to the here and now. Now, grounding is like your emergency brake. It's great when you need it, but what about building a car that's less likely to skid out in the first place? For that, we need some long-term strategies. They say the best defense is a good offense, and that is absolutely true here. You can build a truly resilient, stress-proof memory by changing how you study long before you ever walk into that exam room. It's about training, not just cramming. So many of us fall into the trap of passive studying, just rereading our notes or highlighting textbooks. But the science is crystal clear. This is incredibly inefficient. The real key to a bulletproof memory is a technique called active retrieval, or as it's often called, active recall. Think of active recall like lifting weights for your brain. Instead of just looking at the information again, you are forcing your brain to pull it out of storage, completely from scratch. And every single time you do that, you make the neural pathway to that knowledge a little bit stronger, a little bit faster.
And there are so many simple ways to do this. Classic flashcards are great. You can try the blurting method. Just grab a blank page and write down everything you remember about a topic. Or one of my favorites, try to teach the concept to someone else. If you can explain it simply, you really know it. And if you want to take it to the next level, you combine active recall with something called spaced repetition. All that means is you test yourself on the information at longer and longer intervals. This combo is basically a cheat code for fighting the brain's natural tendency to forget things and locking that knowledge deep into your long-term memory. So here's the bottom line. Going blank in an exam isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal. It's your brain telling you that the way you stored the information wasn't strong enough to stand up to pressure. So maybe stress isn't really the enemy here. Maybe it's just a sign that it's time to upgrade your strategy.